Before we dive in, I just want to say your support fuels this channel. When you subscribe, you never miss new content that I create specifically with you in mind. Your comments not only help this video reach more people, but they actually shape what I create next. I read every single one. Hitting that like button takes just a second of your time but makes a massive difference in helping others discover this content. Plus, the more you engage, the more I can deliver the exact content you want to see. Let's keep building this community together. Subscribe, comment, and like. Amara Jackson sat alone in the massive bedroom of their mansion, staring at the text message that had just come through on her phone. Her husband Robert hadn't come home again. It was the third night this week. The doctor had called earlier with her test results and the news wasn't good. Stage 3 breast cancer. She needed surgery, then chemotherapy. She needed her husband. But Robert was nowhere to be found. She had tried calling him 5 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. She knew exactly where he was, with that woman from his office, Veronica. The affair had been going on for months now. At first, Robert had been careful, making up excuses about late meetings and business trips. But lately he didn't even bother with excuses. He just didn't come home. Amara's hands shook as she set down her phone. 20 years of marriage, building his company together from nothing to a billion-dollar tech empire, and this was how he treated her when she needed him most. The tears wouldn't come anymore. She was too tired, too empty for tears. The mansion that had once felt like a dream home now felt like a prison. 7 bedrooms, a pool, a home theater, a gym, all the luxuries money could buy. But what good was any of it without love? What good was their shared success if she had to face cancer alone? She walked to the large bay window overlooking the garden she had designed herself. The roses were blooming vibrant red against the evening sky. Robert used to bring her roses every Friday when they were young and struggling to make ends meet. Now he bought diamonds and cars thinking that was enough. The housekeeper, Maria, knocked softly on the door. "Mrs. Jackson? I brought you some tea." Amara turned, forcing a smile. "Thank you, Maria. You can leave it on the table." Maria hesitated. "Mr. Jackson called. He said he won't be home tonight. Business trip to Chicago." Chicago. Amara almost laughed. Veronica lived in Chicago. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. "Thank you for letting me know," Amara said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. After Maria left, Amara walked to her closet. It was larger than the entire apartment they'd lived in when they first got married. She ran her fingers over the expensive dresses, the designer shoes, the handbags that cost more than most people made in a month. None of it mattered now. She pulled out a small suitcase. It was time. She couldn't stay here anymore, couldn't keep pretending everything was fine while her husband flaunted his affair and she fought cancer alone. She was done. As she packed, memories flooded back. Their wedding day in that small church in her hometown. The night they got the first big investment for their company. The day they moved into this mansion. They had been so happy then, so in love. When had things changed? When had Robert's success turned him into someone she barely recognized? Her phone rang. It was her sister, Zora. "Hey sis, how did the appointment go?" Zora asked. Amara took a deep breath. "Not good. It's cancer, Zora. Stage 3. The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. "Where's Robert?" Zora finally asked, her voice tight with anger. "With her. Again. That's it. I'm coming to get you. You're staying with me during treatment. I'm not letting you go through this alone while he's out there living his best life with that woman." Amara looked around the beautiful, empty bedroom. "I was just packing." "Good. I'll be there in an hour." After hanging up, Amara sat down at her vanity. The woman in the mirror looked tired, her eyes lacking the spark they once had. But behind the exhaustion there was something else, determination. She would beat this cancer. She would rebuild her life. And Robert? He would learn that some mistakes can't be fixed with money. She finished packing, taking only what she truly needed. As she zipped up the suitcase, she slipped off her wedding ring and placed it on Robert's pillow with a note. "When you decide to come home, I won't be here. I have cancer and I'm fighting it without you. Goodbye, Robert." She walked down the grand staircase for what she thought might be the last time. The house was quiet except for the tick-tock of the antique grandfather clock in the foyer, a wedding gift from her parents. Ironic, she thought, how time keeps moving forward even when your world stops spinning. Outside, the night air was cool against her skin. She sat on the front steps, waiting for Zora, looking up at the stars that seemed so distant, just like her husband's love. Her phone buzzed with a text from Robert. "Late meeting. Don't wait up." Amara didn't reply. Let him come home to an empty house. Let him feel a fraction of the emptiness she had been feeling for months. Let him wonder where she'd gone, why she'd left. She saw headlights coming up the long driveway. Zora had arrived. As she stood up, suitcase in hand, Amara made a promise to herself. This wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where she would put herself first for once. And maybe, just maybe, Robert would realize what he had thrown away. But by then it might be too late. Robert Jackson leaned back in the plush chair of the Chicago penthouse, swirling expensive whiskey in a crystal glass. Across from him, Veronica Palmer crossed her long legs, her red dress riding up her thigh. She was everything Amara wasn't: young, carefree, impressed by his wealth and power. She laughed at his jokes and stroked his ego in ways his wife hadn't done in years. "Another drink?" Veronica asked, already moving to refill his glass. "Sure," he replied, checking his phone. 5 missed calls from Amara. He frowned and put the phone face down on the table. Whatever she wanted could wait. "Is something wrong?" Veronica asked, handing him the fresh drink. "Nothing important," Robert said. "Just work stuff." He had met Veronica 6 months ago at a company party. She worked in marketing and her fresh ideas had caught his attention. One late night at the office had led to drinks, which led to dinner, which led to this: secret weekends and stolen moments away from his marriage. He knew what he was doing was wrong. But Amara had been distant lately, always talking about slowing down, taking time off, focusing on family instead of business. She didn't understand that he couldn't stop now. The company was everything to him. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from his assistant. "Mrs. Jackson called the office looking for you. Said it was urgent." Robert sighed and typed a quick reply: "Tell her I'm in meetings all day." Veronica slid onto his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. "All work and no play makes Robert a dull boy," she whispered, kissing his neck. He smiled, pushing away the nagging guilt. This was what he wanted. Someone who understood his need for success, who didn't try to change him. Later that night, as Veronica slept beside him, Robert stared at the ceiling. He thought about Amara, about the life they had built together. 20 years was a long time. They had started with nothing but dreams and determination. Amara had been there through it all: the failed attempts, the setbacks, the small victories that eventually led to their massive success. He remembered how she used to stay up late with him, going over business plans, offering insights that often proved invaluable. She had a sharp mind and an instinct for people that had helped shape their company culture. Without her, Jackson Tech might never have become the industry giant it was today. But somewhere along the way things had changed. Or maybe he had changed. The more successful he became, the more he wanted. And Amara started wanting different things. A family, community work, time to enjoy the wealth they had accumulated. Robert picked up his phone and saw another missed call from Amara, this one from 3 hours ago. He should call her back. But what would he say? He was tired of the arguments, tired of the disappointment in her eyes. He typed a quick text: "Late meeting. Don't wait up." There. That would buy him another night of freedom, another night to pretend his real life wasn't waiting for him back home. Veronica stirred beside him. "Everything okay?" she murmured sleepily. "Everything's fine," he said, though the knot in his stomach told a different story. The next morning, over breakfast in Veronica's sleek, modern kitchen, Robert's phone rang. It was his home number. Unusual. Amara usually called his cell directly. "I should take this," he said, stepping away from the table. "Mr. Jackson?" It was Maria, their housekeeper. Her voice sounded strange, worried. "Yes, Maria. What is it?" "Sir, Mrs. Jackson is gone." Robert frowned. "What do you mean gone?" "Gone where?" "She left last night, sir. Her sister came to get her. She left something for you in your bedroom." A cold feeling spread through Robert's chest. "I'll be home this afternoon," he said, ending the call. Veronica was watching him, her head tilted questioningly. "Problem?" "I need to go," he said, already gathering his things. "Family emergency." The drive back from Chicago to their suburban estate outside Detroit seemed to take forever. Robert tried calling Amara several times, but her phone went straight to voicemail. He tried Zora next, but she didn't pick up either. By the time he reached the mansion, anxiety had replaced his initial irritation. This wasn't like Amara. She didn't just leave without explanation. The house was quiet when he entered, too quiet. He took the stairs 2 at a time up to their bedroom. Everything looked normal at first glance. The same elegant furniture, the same expensive artwork on the walls. Then he noticed the open closet door. Many of Amara's things were gone. On his pillow lay a small, glittering object, her wedding ring, and a folded piece of paper. His hands trembled slightly as he picked up the note and read Amara's neat handwriting. When you decide to come home, I won't be here. I have cancer and I'm fighting it without you. Goodbye, Robert. The words hit him like a physical blow. Cancer? How was that possible? Amara was always healthy, always strong. And she'd been trying to tell him, he realized with growing horror. The missed calls, the urgent message. He sat heavily on the edge of the bed, the note clutched in his hand. What had he done? What kind of man ignores his wife when she needs him most? The weight of his betrayal crashed down on him all at once. He called Zora again, desperate now. This time she answered. Where is she? He demanded without preamble. Where were you when she got her diagnosis? Zora shot back, her voice cold with fury. Where were you when she needed her husband? Zora, please. I need to talk to her. She doesn't want to talk to you, Robert. She's finally putting herself first and it's about time. She's my wife, he said, his voice breaking. You should have remembered that before you started sleeping with your mistress, Zora replied before hanging up. Robert stared at the phone in his hand, then back at the wedding ring on the pillow. What had seemed so important yesterday, Veronica, the thrill of the affair, the escape from responsibility, now seemed meaningless and hollow. He had everything a man could want: success, wealth, a beautiful home, a wife who had stood by him through it all. And he had thrown it all away for what? A fling with a woman who knew only the man he had become, not the man he had been? His phone buzzed with a text from Veronica. Everything okay? When are you coming back? Robert didn't reply. Instead, he pocketed Amara's wedding ring and headed back downstairs. He had to find her. He had to make this right, if that was even possible anymore. As he reached for his car keys, he caught sight of a framed photo on the entryway table. Him and Amara on their 10th anniversary, both smiling, her head on his shoulder. They looked happy in love. When had he stopped seeing her? When had he started taking her for granted? The answers didn't matter now. What mattered was finding her and begging for a second chance he knew he didn't deserve. What mattered was being there for her through her illness, if she would let him. He got in his car and started driving toward Zora's house, not sure what he would say when he got there, only knowing that he had to try. Amara sat in the sterile examination room of Detroit Metropolitan Cancer Center, clutching her sister's hand as Dr. Patel explained the treatment plan. The words washed over her: surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, survival rates, side effects. It all seemed surreal, like something happening to someone else. We'll need to schedule surgery as soon as possible, Dr. Patel said, her kind eyes serious behind her glasses. Then we'll start chemotherapy about 3 weeks after that. Zora squeezed Amara's hand. She'll have the best care, doctor. I'll make sure of it. Amara nodded, grateful for her sister's strength when her own seemed to be failing. What about work? Amara asked. Even now, with her marriage falling apart and cancer threatening her life, she couldn't stop thinking about her responsibilities. She still served on the board of Jackson Tech, still oversaw the charitable foundation she had created with Robert. You'll need to take some time off, Dr. Patel advised. Focus on healing. The treatments will be exhausting. After the appointment, as they walked to Zora's car, Amara's phone rang. Robert's name flashed on the screen. It was the 20th time he had called since she'd left 2 days ago. Are you going to answer it? Zora asked, her tone making it clear what she thought Amara should do. Amara silenced the phone. Not yet. I need time to process everything. Back at Zora's comfortable suburban home, Amara settled on the couch in the guest room that would be hers during treatment. Her niece and nephew were at school and the house was quiet. Too quiet. It gave her too much space to think. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Robert. Please talk to me. I need to know you're okay. She almost laughed. Now he cared if she was okay? Where was that concern when she was waiting for her test results alone? Where was that concern all the months he'd been sneaking around with Veronica? But beneath her anger was a deeper pain. She still loved him. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and neglect, a part of her heart still belonged to the man she had built a life with. The man who, once upon a time, had held her when she cried, had celebrated her victories, had been her partner in every sense of the word. She typed a reply, then deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. Finally she settled on, I'm safe. Getting treatment. Need time. His response was immediate. Let me be there for you. Please. She didn't reply to that one. Later that afternoon, as Zora prepared dinner, the doorbell rang. Amara froze, somehow knowing who it was before Zora even went to check. It's him, Zora called from the entryway. Want me to send him away? Amara took a deep breath. She had to face him eventually. Might as well be now, while she still had the armor of fresh anger to protect her. "Let him in," she said, standing up and smoothing her shirt, suddenly self-conscious about how tired she looked. Robert stepped into the living room, and the sight of him, familiar yet somehow a stranger, made her heart clench. He looked terrible, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. Good, she thought. Let him suffer a little. "Amara," he said, his voice breaking on her name. "I just found out. Why didn't you tell me?" The question ignited her anger. "I tried to tell you, Robert. I called you 5 times the day I got the results. You were too busy with your mistress to pick up the phone." He flinched as if she had slapped him. "I know. I have no excuse. But please let me be here for you now." Zora made a disgusted noise from the doorway. "You've got some nerve showing up here like this." Robert didn't take his eyes off Amara. "I know I don't deserve another chance. But this isn't about me. It's about you, Amara. Let me help you through this. Whatever you need, the best doctors, treatment, anything." "I don't need your money, Robert," Amara said quietly. "I have my own. What I needed was my husband, my partner. But you weren't there." "I'm here now," he said, taking a step toward her. "It's too late," she replied, though the words hurt to say. "Please leave." He looked like he wanted to argue, but then his shoulders slumped in defeat. "At least let me know how the treatment is going. Please." Amara nodded slightly. She could give him that much. "I have surgery next week. Then chemo." "Which hospital?" "Detroit Metropolitan." Robert nodded. "I'll make sure they have everything you need." After he left, Zora brought Amara a cup of tea. "You okay?" Amara sighed. "I don't know. Seeing him, it still hurts." "Of course it does. You loved him for 20 years. That doesn't just go away. Do you think he really cares? Or is this just guilt?" Zora sat beside her sister. "I don't know. But what I do know is that you need to focus on getting better. The rest can wait." The day of the surgery came quickly. Amara was prepped and waiting to be taken to the operating room when a nurse entered her curtained area. "Mrs. Jackson? These just arrived for you." She handed Amara a small vase containing 3 perfect red roses, just like the ones Robert used to bring her every Friday when they were young. Attached was a note, "Fighting with you from afar. Love, R." Despite herself, Amara felt tears spring to her eyes. It was a small gesture, but it reminded her of the man she had fallen in love with, the man who might still exist somewhere beneath the ambitious, neglectful person he had become. As they wheeled her toward surgery, Amara found herself wondering, was it possible to rebuild what had been broken? Or was it better to let go and start anew? The anesthesia began to take effect, and as consciousness slipped away, her last thought was of Robert, not as he was now but as he had been on their wedding day, looking at her like she was the only woman in the world. Robert paced the waiting room of Detroit Metropolitan Cancer Center, checking his watch every few minutes. Amara had been in surgery for 3 hours. Zora sat across from him, pointedly ignoring his presence, flipping through a magazine she clearly wasn't reading. "Shouldn't we have heard something by now?" he asked, unable to contain his anxiety any longer. Zora looked up, her expression softening slightly at the genuine concern in his voice. "These things take time. Dr. Patel said it could be 4 to 5 hours. Robert nodded and resumed pacing. He had cancelled all his meetings for the week, much to the shock of his executive team. In the 10 years since Jackson Tech had gone public, he had never taken more than a day off at a time. But none of that mattered now. The company, the deals, the money, it all seemed insignificant compared to what was happening in that operating room. Finally, Dr. Patel appeared, still in her surgical scrubs. Both Robert and Zora stood immediately. "The surgery went well," she said with a tired smile. "We were able to remove the tumor and some surrounding tissue. The sentinel lymph node biopsy shows the cancer hasn't spread beyond what we could see on the imaging." Robert felt his knees weaken with relief. "When can we see her?" "She's in recovery now. Once she's moved to a room you can visit briefly. She'll be groggy from the anesthesia." An hour later, a nurse led them to Amara's room. She looked small and vulnerable in the hospital bed, her skin ashen against the white sheets. Robert hung back, letting Zora go to her side first. "Hey sis," Zora said softly, taking Amara's hand. "You did great." Amara's eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then clearing as she recognized her sister. "Is it over?" "All done. Dr. Patel says it went perfectly." Amara nodded slightly, then her gaze shifted past Zora to where Robert stood awkwardly by the door. A mix of emotions crossed her face, surprise, confusion, something like longing before her expression closed off again. "You're here," she said simply. "I'm here," he replied, moving closer to the bed. "I've been here the whole time." Zora stood up. "I'll give you 2 a minute," she said, though her pointed look at Robert clearly communicated, "Don't upset her." Once Zora had left, Robert took the chair beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Tired. Sore." Amara's voice was raspy from the intubation tube. "You didn't have to come." "Yes, I did," he said firmly. "I know I've been the worst husband in the world, Amara. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm not going anywhere. Not this time." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I can't do this right now, Robert. I'm too tired." He nodded, understanding. "Rest. I'll be here when you wake up." And he was. When Amara opened her eyes several hours later, Robert was sitting in the same chair, working quietly on his laptop. He looked up immediately when she stirred. "Water?" he asked, already reaching for the cup on her tray. She nodded, and he held the straw to her lips, supporting her head with his other hand. The gentle touch was so familiar, so reminiscent of better times, that Amara had to fight back tears again. "Thank you," she said when she had drunk her fill. "Anything else you need? Are you in pain?" "A little," she admitted. Robert pressed the call button for the nurse. "We'll get you something for that." After the nurse had come and gone, administering pain medication, Amara felt herself relaxing as the drug took effect. Robert was still there, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You should go home," she said. "Get some rest." "I'm not leaving," he replied. "Unless you really want me to." Did she? Part of her wanted to send him away, to punish him for his betrayal. But another part, a part she was too weak to fight right now, was comforted by his presence. "Stay," she whispered, already drifting back to sleep. The next few days followed a similar pattern. Robert was there constantly, dividing his time between Amara's room and the hallway where he took necessary business calls. He brought her favorite books, made sure the hospital staff was attentive to her needs, and even managed to get the chef from their favorite restaurant to prepare special meals that tempted her appetite despite the post-surgical nausea. On the 3rd day, when she was strong enough to take a short walk around the floor, he supported her, his arms steady around her waist. They didn't talk much. There was too much to say, and a hospital corridor wasn't the place to say it. On the 5th day, Dr. Patel declared Amara ready to go home. The word hung in the air between her and Robert. Home. But where was that now? "You're coming back to the house," Robert said, as if reading her thoughts. "I've had the guest suite on the main floor prepared so you won't have to deal with stairs." Amara hesitated. "I was planning to stay with Zora. Zora has her family, her job. And the house is too small for everyone," Robert argued gently. "Our home has everything you need for recovery, space, privacy, staff to help." "Our home," Amara echoed. It didn't feel like hers anymore. But the thought of navigating Zora's busy household while recovering from surgery and facing chemotherapy was daunting. "At least until you're stronger," Robert added. "Please, Amara. Let me do this much." Zora, surprisingly, supported the idea when Amara consulted her. "As much as I hate to admit it, he's right," she said. "You'll have more comfort there. And he seems sincere about wanting to help." "What about her?" Amara couldn't bring herself to say Veronica's name. "I asked him about that," Zora admitted. "He says it's over. Has been since the day he found your note." Amara wasn't sure she believed that. But she was too tired to argue, too drained to make decisions. So she agreed to go back to the mansion at least temporarily. The homecoming was strange. The house looked the same, grand, beautiful, filled with expensive things that suddenly seemed meaningless in the face of mortality. But it felt different. Or maybe she was the one who had changed. Robert had indeed prepared the guest suite meticulously. Fresh flowers in her favorite colors brightened the room. Her most comfortable clothes were laid out. A new television had been installed, along with a small refrigerator stocked with her preferred snacks and drinks. "Is there anything else you need?" he asked, hovering uncertainly by the door after helping her settle in. Amara looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since leaving the hospital. He had lost weight and the lines around his eyes seemed deeper. He looked like a man carrying a heavy burden. "Why are you doing this, Robert?" she asked quietly. He met her gaze steadily. "Because I love you. Because I forgot what mattered and I almost lost everything that gives my life meaning. Because I want a chance to be the man you deserved all along." "And Veronica?" "Over. Completely." His voice was firm. "I ended it the day I found your note. I haven't spoken to her since, except to tell her never to contact me again. Amara wanted to believe him. But trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. I need time, she said. Robert nodded. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. As he turned to leave, Amara called after him. Robert. He paused, looking back. Thank you. For being there at the hospital. A small smile touched his lips. It's where I should have been all along. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed in the familiar house, Amara found herself thinking about second chances. Was it possible to rebuild what had been destroyed? Or would the foundation always be cracked, waiting for the next storm to bring the whole structure crashing down? She didn't have answers yet. But as she drifted off to sleep, she realized she was no longer certain that the end of her marriage was inevitable. And that uncertainty, that small opening for possibility, was something she hadn't felt since the day she'd read those test results alone. The day of Amara's first chemotherapy session dawned bright and clear, a beautiful spring morning that seemed to mock the difficult day ahead. Robert drove her to the cancer center, the silence in the car thick with unspoken words. He had been respectful of her need for space since she'd returned to the mansion, sleeping in one of the other guest rooms, making himself available but not intrusive. In the treatment room, Amara sat in a reclining chair while a nurse prepared the four. Robert stood awkwardly nearby, unsure of his place. You can sit, Amara told him, gesturing to the chair beside her. This is going to take a while. As the drugs began to flow into her veins, Amara closed her eyes, trying to focus on positive thoughts. The statistics were good. Dr. Patel was confident. She was strong, a fighter. Tell me about work, she said suddenly, opening her eyes to look at Robert. How's the new software launch going? He seemed surprised by the question. You want to talk about work? Now. I need the distraction, she admitted. And I'm still on the board, remember? I have a right to know. So he told her, hesitantly at first, then with more animation as he described the challenges they were facing with the launch. It was familiar territory, a conversation they had had countless times over the years. For a moment it almost felt like old times. What do you think? He asked after explaining a particularly tricky marketing problem. Amara considered, her business mind engaging despite the drugs flowing into her system. I think you're looking at it from the wrong angle. The issue isn't the product features. It's the user experience. Robert listened intently as she outlined her thoughts. That actually makes a lot of sense, he said when she finished. I hadn't considered that perspective. That's because you're too close to the technical side, she said with a small smile. You always have been. He returned the smile, and for a brief moment, their eyes met in perfect understanding, the way they used to when they were partners in every sense of the word. The moment passed, but something had shifted. By the time the session was over and the nurse removed the four, Amara felt both physically drained and emotionally lighter, as if a tiny crack had appeared in the wall she had built around her heart. The side effects hit that evening: nausea, fatigue, a general feeling of unwellness that made even the simplest tasks seem monumental. Robert was there, quietly supportive, bringing ginger tea and crackers, adjusting pillows, dimming lights when they became too bright for her sensitive eyes. You don't have to do all this, she told him as he helped her back to bed after a particularly bad bout of nausea. I want to, he replied simply. In the days that followed, a routine developed. Amara would have good days and bad days. On the good days she would work a little from home, reviewing documents for the foundation, participating in board meetings via video conference. Robert would bring her updates from the office, seeking her input on decisions that once would have been made without her. On the bad days when the chemo side effects were at their worst, he would read to her books from her favorite authors, articles about topics that interested her, sometimes just the news to keep her connected to the outside world. One evening, about 2 weeks after her first treatment, Amara was feeling well enough to join Robert for dinner in the small breakfast nook rather than eating in her room. Maria had prepared her favorite soup, one of the few things she could keep down reliably. I've been thinking, Robert said as they ate, about what you said before, about wanting to slow down, focus more on family. Amara looked up, surprised. That was a long time ago. Not that long, he countered. And you were right. I've been looking at my schedule, at what I actually need to be involved in versus what I could delegate. There's a lot I could step back from. Why would you do that? Amara asked cautiously. You love being in the thick of things. The deal-making, the competition, it's what drives you. Robert set down his spoon, his expression serious. I thought it was. But these past few weeks being here with you, I've realized something. All that stuff, the deals, the money, the status, it doesn't mean anything without someone to share it with. Without you. Amara felt her throat tighten with emotion. Robert, let me finish, he said gently. I'm not saying this to pressure you or to win points. I'm saying it because it's true. I lost sight of what matters. I got caught up in chasing more and more, thinking that success was measured by the size of our bank account or the number of people who know my name. But none of that matters when the person who knows me best, who loved me when I had nothing, is suffering and I'm not there. Tears slid down Amara's cheeks. It hurt so much, she whispered. Not just the affair, but feeling like I didn't matter to you anymore. Robert reached across the table, tentatively taking her hand. When she didn't pull away, he squeezed gently. You have always mattered. I just forgot to show it. I took you for granted and that's the worst thing I could have done. But I'm learning, Amara. I'm trying to be better. She didn't say anything, but she didn't withdraw her hand either. It was a small step, but a step nonetheless. The next day, Amara was sitting in the garden, enjoying the sunshine during one of her good periods when her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello? Mrs. Jackson? A woman's voice said. This is Veronica Palmer. Amara's blood ran cold. What do you want? To apologize, Veronica said, her voice unexpectedly subdued. I know nothing I say can make up for what happened. But I wanted you to know that it's over. Completely over. Amara's grip tightened on the phone. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth, Veronica replied. Robert ended things the day he found out about your diagnosis. He told me he had made the biggest mistake of his life and that he was going to do everything in his power to win you back. He could have told me that himself, Amara said, struggling to keep her voice steady. He probably did, Veronica said. But I thought you might not believe him. I didn't know about your illness. I'm not trying to excuse what we did, but I wanted you to know that he truly loves you. The way he talked about you even when it was always clear that you were the love of his life. I was just a distraction. Amara closed her eyes, unsure how to feel about this unexpected call. Thank you for telling me, she said finally. I hope you find what you're looking for, Veronica. After hanging up, Amara sat in the garden for a long time thinking. The call from Veronica had shaken her, but not in the way she would have expected. Instead of anger or jealousy, she felt something closer to closure. The other woman was no longer a faceless threat but a real person who had made mistakes, just as Robert had, just as Amara herself had in other ways throughout their marriage. That evening when Robert brought her dinner, Amara mentioned the call. Veronica contacted me today, she said, watching his face carefully. Robert's expression shifted from shock to concern. What? Why would she do that? To confirm what you told me, that it's over. That you ended it as soon as you found out about my cancer. Robert set down the tray he was carrying. Amara, I swear I didn't put her up to this. I haven't spoken to her since. I believe you, Amara interrupted softly. Strangely enough, I actually believe both of you. Relief washed over Robert's face. I don't know why she called, but I'm glad if it helped in any way. It did, Amara admitted. It helped me see that what happened between you two wasn't just about her. It was about us, about what was missing in our marriage. Robert sat down beside her. Nothing was missing in our marriage except me being present in it, he said firmly. You were always there, always supportive, always loving. I was the one who checked out. Maybe, Amara conceded. But maybe I could have fought harder to keep your attention, to remind you what we were building together wasn't just a business empire but a life. You shouldn't have had to fight for my attention, Robert said, taking her hand. That's on me, not you. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the first truly comfortable silence they had shared since Amara's return to the mansion. I have another treatment tomorrow, she said eventually. I know. I've cleared my schedule. You don't have to. I want to, he said again, the phrase that had become his mantra during her illness. I want to be there, Amara. For all of it. As they sat together, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, Amara realized something. The wall around her heart wasn't just cracked now, it was crumbling. And she wasn't sure she wanted to rebuild it. 6 weeks into Amara's chemotherapy, the physical toll was evident. Her hair had begun to fall out in clumps, and rather than watch it happen gradually, she had asked Zora to shave her head. Robert had been out of town for a rare business trip he couldn't reschedule, the first time he'd left her side since she'd returned to the mansion. When he came home and saw her, he stopped in the doorway of her suite, his expression unreadable. That bad, huh? Amara said, self-consciously touching her bare scalp. Robert crossed the room in 3 quick strides and knelt beside her chair. You are beautiful, he said, his voice thick with emotion. So incredibly beautiful. Before she could respond, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I brought you something. Inside was a delicate silk scarf in swirling patterns of blue and gold, her favorite colors. I thought, for when you feel like covering up, he explained. Though you don't need to. Not for me. Amara ran her fingers over the soft fabric. It's lovely. Thank you. There's something else, Robert said, reaching into his briefcase. He pulled out a thick folder and handed it to her. Curious, Amara opened it. Inside were legal documents, lots of them. She flipped through, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. What is all this? I've restructured the company, Robert explained. Created a new board position, co-chair, with equal power to the CEO. It's yours if you want it. Amara looked up, startled. Equal to you? Robert, that's what should have happened years ago, he finished for her. You helped build Jackson Tech as much as I did. Your vision, your insight into what people actually need, that's been the secret to our success all along. I just took the credit. She continued looking through the documents, finding more surprises. The foundation, you've tripled the endowment? Robert nodded. You always said we should be doing more for education in underserved communities. Now we can. The last document made her breath catch. It was a deed to a house she didn't recognize. What's this? A place at the lake, Robert said. Like the one you always talked about. Quiet, private, away from the city. A place to recover, to think, to start over if that's what you decide. Amara's eyes filled with tears. You remembered. I remember everything, Amara. Even the things I pretended not to hear because they didn't fit with my plans. I was selfish and short-sighted, and I almost lost the best thing in my life because of it. He took her hands, his gaze intense. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet. I know I haven't earned it. But I am asking for a chance to show you that I can be the man you needed all along. Amara felt overwhelmed. The changes Robert was making weren't superficial gestures. They represented a fundamental shift in priorities and values. Could people really change that much? Or would he eventually revert to his old ways once the crisis had passed? I don't know what to say, she admitted. You don't have to say anything now, he assured her. Just know that whether you decide to give our marriage another chance or not, these changes are permanent. You will always have your rightful place in the company we built together. The foundation will continue its expanded mission. And the lake house is yours regardless of what happens between us. That night, Amara lay awake thinking about Robert's gifts. Not the material things which were meaningful but ultimately just objects, but the recognition of her value, her contributions, her dreams. It was something she had stopped hoping for long ago. The next morning she asked Robert to take her to the lake house. The drive was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, Amara was struck by how perfectly the place matched the vision she had described to Robert years ago. A modern but cozy structure nestled among tall pines, with a wide deck overlooking the water. Inside, the house was furnished simply but elegantly, with large windows bringing nature indoors. There was a small dock with a rowboat, just as she had always wanted. How did you find this place? She asked as they stood on the deck, watching a pair of loons dive beneath the lake's surface. I've had agents looking for months, Robert admitted. Ever since I realized how much I'd been ignoring what matters to you. Amara turned to him, really studying his face. The man standing beside her was both familiar and new, the same Robert she had loved for 20 years, but somehow softer, more open, more present. Why did you do it? She asked quietly. It was the question that had haunted her since discovering his affair. Was I not enough anymore? Robert's face crumpled with regret. It was never about you not being enough. It was about me feeling like I wasn't enough. The more successful we became, the more I worried that I didn't deserve it, or you. So I kept pushing for more, thinking that if I just achieved enough, acquired enough, I could quiet that voice in my head telling me I was a fraud. And Veronica? Was easy, he said simply. She only knew the successful Robert Jackson, CEO of a billion-dollar company. She had no expectations because she had no history with me. Being with her didn't require vulnerability or honesty or growth. It was cowardly. Amara let his words sink in. There was a ring of truth to them that resonated with her own observations of Robert over the years, how his drive for success had always seemed tinged with something like desperation, as if he were running from something rather than toward something. I think I understand, she said finally. Not that it makes it hurt less, but I think I understand. They stayed at the lake house for the weekend, talking more openly than they had in years. About the past, Not just Robert's betrayal but all the small disconnections that had led them to that point. About the present, Amara's treatment, her fears, her hopes. And tentatively, about the future, what it might look like, whether it included both of them together or on separate paths. On Sunday evening, as they prepared to return to the city for Amara's next treatment, she made a decision. "I'd like to spend more time here," she told Robert as they stood by the car. "After my treatment cycle ends next month. I think it would be a good place to heal. In all the ways I need to heal." Robert nodded. "Of course. Whatever you need. And I'd like you to come too," she added softly. "Not all the time. I still need my space. But maybe weekends? We could see where things go." The hope that bloomed on Robert's face was almost painful to see. "I'd like that very much," he said. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. It wasn't a promise to rebuild their marriage. But it was an opening, a possibility, a seed that might grow into something new if properly tended. As they drove back to the city, Amara found herself thinking about second chances. Not just the second chance she might be offering Robert, but the second chance she had been given at life itself. Cancer had forced her to confront her mortality, to reevaluate what truly mattered. And perhaps, in a strange way, it had also given her marriage a second chance it might not have had otherwise. Whether that second chance would lead to reconciliation or to an amicable parting of ways remained to be seen. But for the first time since finding Robert's note, Amara felt hope, not just for her health but for her heart as well. Summer turned to fall, and with it came significant milestones in Amara's journey. Her final chemotherapy treatment was marked with a small celebration. Just Amara, Robert, Zora, and Dr. Patel sharing cake in the hospital treatment room. The scans showed no signs of cancer, though Dr. Patel cautioned that they would need to monitor closely for the next several years. "But for now," she said with a warm smile, "I'd say you've won this battle." Physically, Amara was beginning to recover. Her hair was growing back, a soft fuzz covering her scalp. Her energy levels were improving, though she still tired more easily than before. The nausea that had plagued her throughout treatment was finally subsiding. Emotionally, the healing was happening more gradually. As promised, Amara had moved to the lake house after completing her treatment, seeking the peace and quiet she needed to process all that had happened. Robert visited on weekends, careful to respect her boundaries while also making it clear he was committed to rebuilding their relationship if she would have him. During one such weekend in late September, they sat on the dock, watching the sunset paint the lake in fiery colors. The evening air was crisp, hinting at the winter to come. Robert had wrapped a thick blanket around Amara's shoulders, and they sat close but not touching, comfortable in each other's presence in a way that would have seemed impossible months ago. "I had a meeting with the foundation board yesterday," Robert said. "They've approved the new scholarship program for young women in STEM. It'll launch in January." Amara smiled. The program had been her idea, something she proposed years ago but had been repeatedly postponed for more pressing priorities. "That's wonderful. How many students will it support?" 20 to start, with plans to expand to 50 within 3 years, Robert replied. "We're partnering with 5 historically black colleges and universities to identify candidates. I'd like to be involved in the selection committee," Amara said. "Once I'm back to work full-time." Robert nodded. "Of course. It's your program. Speaking of which..." He hesitated, then continued. "The board is hoping you'll take up your position as co-chair soon. Davis is retiring next month, and we could use your perspective on his replacement." Amara had been contemplating her return to work. During her treatment, she had maintained limited involvement through video conferences and reviewing documents from home. But the prospect of stepping into the powerful new role Robert had created for her was both exciting and intimidating. "I've been thinking about that," she admitted. "I'm not sure I want to jump right back into 60-hour weeks and constant travel." "You don't have to," Robert assured her quickly. "The position is yours to define. Work remotely from here as much as you want. Choose the projects that matter to you. Delegate the rest." Amara studied his face in the fading light. "And you'd be okay with that?" The Robert the first knew 6 months ago would have expected his co-chair to be as driven and present as he was. Robert was quiet for a moment. "The Robert you knew 6 months ago was a fool who almost lost everything that matters," he said finally. "I've done a lot of thinking while you've been here, and I've been in that big empty house. About what success really means. About what kind of legacy I want to leave." He reached out hesitantly, taking her hand. "I want a legacy of love, Amara. Of using our success to make a difference. Of building something meaningful together, not just a company but a life." If that means reshaping how we work, then that's what we'll do. Amara felt tears prick her eyes. For so long she had wished Robert would see beyond the next deal, the next acquisition, the next billion. Now he seemed to truly understand what she had been trying to tell him for years. "I'd like to come back after the new year," she said. 3 days a week in the office, 2 from here. And no travel for the first 6 months at least. Robert smiled, squeezing her hand. "Done. Whatever you need." As darkness fell around them, Amara made another decision, one she had been contemplating for weeks. She turned toward Robert, meeting his gaze directly. "I'd like you to stay tonight," she said softly. "Not in the guest room." Robert's eyes widened with surprise, then softened with emotion. "Are you sure?" Amara nodded. She wasn't ready to say she had forgiven him completely, wasn't ready to declare their marriage fully healed. But she was ready for this step, to reconnect physically with the man she had loved for most of her adult life, to see if that essential spark still existed between them. That night, their lovemaking was gentle, almost tentative, like two people finding their way back to each other after a long separation. There were tears, whispered words of love and regret, moments of rediscovery. It wasn't the passionate reunion of romance novels, but something deeper, more meaningful, the conscious choice to try again, to rebuild what had been broken. Afterwards, lying in Robert's arms, Amara felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in a very long time. The future was still uncertain, the healing still incomplete. But for the first time she truly believed that they might find their way back to each other, not as the people they had been but as the people they were becoming. "I love you," Robert whispered into the darkness. "I never stopped, even when I was too blind to show it." Amara rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you too," she replied. "That's what made it hurt so much." "I know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt it again." As she drifted toward sleep, Amara thought about the journey they had taken, from the bright-eyed young couple starting a business in their garage to the successful but distant partners they had become, to the broken people facing cancer and betrayal, and now to this moment of tentative renewal. It hadn't been an easy road and there were surely more challenges ahead. But perhaps, she thought sleepily, the hardest parts were behind them. The next morning, Amara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of gentle rain against the windows. She found Robert in the kitchen, preparing breakfast, something he had never done in their previous life together. "Good morning," he said, looking up with a smile that held both joy and uncertainty. "I hope you're hungry." Amara felt a rush of affection for this man who was trying so hard to be better. "Starving," she replied, returning his smile. Over breakfast, they talked about practical matters. When Amara might start spending time at the mansion again, how to manage the transition back to work, whether to host Thanksgiving for Zora and her family. "One day at a time," Robert said when they both became overwhelmed by the decisions ahead. "We don't have to figure everything out today." Amara nodded, grateful for his patience. "One day at a time," she agreed. As they cleared the breakfast dishes together, another new experience, Amara remembered something Dr. Patel had told her when she was first diagnosed. Cancer changes everything. But not all those changes are bad. Sometimes it shows us what truly matters in life. Looking at Robert now, humbled, present, attentive in ways he had never been before, Amara thought perhaps the doctor had been right. The cancer had nearly taken her life, but it had also, paradoxically, given her back her husband. Not the same man he had been, but someone new, someone better. And she too was different, stronger in some ways, more vulnerable in others, but with a clarity about her priorities that she had been lacking before. "What are you thinking about?" Robert asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Amara smiled. "About change. About how sometimes the worst things that happen to us can lead to the best things." Robert set down the dish he was drying and took her hands. "I wish you hadn't had to go through this to make me see what I was throwing away. But I'm grateful every day that I got a second chance to be the husband you deserve." Amara stood on tiptoe and kissed him gently. "We're both getting a second chance," she said. "Let's make the most of it." Winter descended on the lake house, transforming the landscape into a pristine wonderland of snow and ice. Amara had decorated for Christmas, something she had always loved but that had become perfunctory in recent years as both she and Robert became too busy with work to properly celebrate. This year was different. She had spent days selecting the perfect tree, hanging ornaments, and stringing lights along the deck railing. Inside, the house was warm and fragrant with the scents of pine and cinnamon. It was Christmas Eve, and for the first time since her diagnosis, the entire family would be together. Zora and her husband Marcus, their teenage children Nia and Isaiah, and Robert, who had been driving up from the city more and more frequently as their relationship continued to heal. Amara was in the kitchen putting the finishing touches on dinner when she heard Robert's car in the driveway. He had promised to arrive early to help with preparations, but a last-minute meeting had delayed him. She wiped her hands on a towel and went to greet him. Robert stood in the entryway, snowflakes melting in his hair, his arms full of brightly wrapped packages. But it wasn't the presence that caught Amara's attention. It was the expression on his face, a mixture of nervousness and excitement that reminded her of the young man who had proposed to her all those years ago. "Sorry I'm late," he said, setting down the gifts. The meeting ran over, and then the roads were terrible. "You're here now," Amara replied, helping him with his coat. "That's what matters." Robert pulled her into an embrace, breathing in the scent of her hair. "You look beautiful," he murmured. "Healthy. Strong." Amara smiled against his chest. Her hair had grown back, different than before, thicker with a slight wave and sprinkled with more gray than she'd had pre-chemo. She could have dyed it, but she had chosen not to. The gray was a badge of survival, a reminder of what she had overcome. "How was the meeting?" she asked as they walked to the kitchen together. "Productive," Robert replied. "We finalized the acquisition of that AI startup I told you about, the one developing educational software for underserved schools." Amara nodded. The acquisition had been her suggestion, a way to expand Jackson Tech's impact in education while also strengthening their product line. It was the kind of decision that reflected their new shared vision for the company. "The CEO was impressed with our commitment to keeping the software affordable for public schools," Robert continued. "He said that was what convinced him to go with our offer over Global Tech's, even though they were offering more money." Amara felt a surge of pride, not just in the deal itself, but in how far Robert had come in prioritizing impact alongside profit. "That's wonderful. When do we announce it?" "January 2nd. The team is preparing the press release now. They want quotes from both of us." The casual "both of us" warmed Amara's heart. In the 3 months since she had officially returned to work as co-chair, she and Robert had developed a true partnership, professionally and personally. The board had initially been skeptical about the power-sharing arrangement, but the results spoke for themselves. The company was thriving, employee satisfaction was up, and their new initiatives were generating positive press. More importantly, Robert had kept his promises. He respected her schedule, supported her decisions, and genuinely valued her input. The man who had once been absent even when physically present was now fully engaged in every aspect of their shared life. Zora and her family arrived an hour later, bringing more gifts and a homemade sweet potato pie. The house filled with laughter and conversation as they gathered around the fire, sharing stories and catching up. Amara watched from the kitchen doorway as Robert played a board game with Nia and Isaiah, his competitive nature coming out as the teenagers teased him about falling behind. This too was new, Robert engaging with family, making time for play, being present in ways that didn't involve work or networking. "He's different," Zora said quietly, coming to stand beside her sister. "I didn't think it was possible, but he's actually changed." Amara nodded. "I didn't think so either at first. I kept waiting for him to revert back, to get bored with playing the attentive husband once the crisis had passed. But it's been almost a year, and if anything, he's more committed now than in the beginning." Zora sipped her wine thoughtfully. "You know what I think? I think he always had it in him to be this man. He just needed the right wake-up call." "A pretty extreme one," Amara said wryly. "Sometimes that's what it takes," Zora replied. "The question is, are you happy? Truly happy?" Amara considered the question. There had been dark times in the past year when happiness seemed an impossible goal, when the pain of Robert's betrayal and the fear of cancer had overshadowed everything else. But now, looking at her family gathered in this home she loved, feeling healthy and purposeful, reconnected to the man she had chosen to spend her life with. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm happy." After dinner, as the others gathered in the living room to exchange gifts, Robert asked Amara to step outside with him for a moment. They stood on the deck, bundled against the cold, looking out at the frozen lake gleaming under the full moon. "I have something for you," Robert said. "Something I didn't want to give you in front of everyone else." From his pocket he withdrew a small velvet box. Amara's breath caught. It wasn't the size or shape of a ring box, it was larger, flatter. "What is this?" she asked as he placed it in her hands. "Open it and see." Inside was a delicate gold locket. When Amara pressed the tiny clasp, it opened to reveal 2 photos. On one side, a picture of them on their wedding day, young and full of hope. On the other, A more recent photo taken at the lake during the summer, both of them older, wiser, their eyes reflecting all they had been through together. I thought, Robert said hesitantly, that maybe it was time to start wearing your wedding ring again. But then I realized that wouldn't be right. We're not the same people who exchanged those rings 20 years ago. What we have now is something new, built on the foundation of our history but forged in the fire of everything we've survived. He took the locket from her hands and gently fastened it around her neck. This represents both, who we were and who we are now. Our past and our future. Amara touched the locket, tears filling her eyes. It was exactly right, not a return to what had been, but an acknowledgement of their journey and a hope for what lay ahead. I have something for you too, she said. It's inside though. In the bedroom, Amara retrieved a large envelope from her dresser drawer. I was going to wait until tomorrow but now seems right. Robert opened it curiously. Inside were legal documents, their divorce papers which Amara had drawn up during the darkest days of her treatment and Robert's betrayal but had never filed. I don't understand, he said looking confused and a little hurt. Keep reading, Amara urged gently. Behind the divorce papers was another document, a renewal of vows ceremony, scheduled for their anniversary in April. Amara, Robert breathed, his eyes wide. I kept these papers, she explained, taking the divorce documents from his hands, as a reminder of how close we came to losing everything. And now I'm giving them to you so you can destroy them. Because I don't need them anymore. I don't want an escape route. She held his gaze steadily. What I want is to stand before our family and friends and choose you again. The man you've become, the man I've grown to love in new ways this past year. Robert's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? After everything? I'm sure, Amara said firmly. The past can't be erased, Robert. What happened, the affair, the cancer, all of it, it's part of our story now. But it doesn't have to define our future. She took his hands in hers. I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to that pain isn't helping either of us move forward. And I want to move forward, together. Robert pulled her into an embrace so tight it almost hurt. I don't deserve you, he whispered against her hair. I never did. But I swear I will spend every day for the rest of our lives trying to be worthy of this second chance. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other, the divorce papers forgotten on the bed. Outside, snow began to fall, soft flakes illuminated by the Christmas lights strung along the deck. Inside, the sounds of their family's laughter filtered through the closed door. We should get back, Amara said eventually. Zora will wonder where we've disappeared to. Robert nodded, but before they left the room he picked up the divorce papers and tore them in half, then in quarters. To new beginnings, he said, dropping the pieces into the wastebasket. Amara touched the locket at her throat. To new beginnings, she echoed. And to love that's strong enough to survive even the hardest tests. Hand in hand they returned to their family, to the warmth and light of the holiday gathering. And as midnight approached, bringing Christmas Day and the promise of a new year, Amara felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought them here, not despite its painful twists and turns but because of them. Spring came early to the lake, the ice melting to reveal the clear water beneath, wildflowers pushing through the softening earth. As April approached, bringing with it Robert and Amara's 21st anniversary, preparations for their vow renewal ceremony were in full swing. They had decided to hold it at the lake house, with just their closest friends and family in attendance. No lavish displays of wealth, no corporate associates or business partners, just the people who had supported them through the darkest days of their marriage and Amara's illness. One evening as they sat on the deck watching the sunset, Robert brought up a subject they had been avoiding. I've been thinking about the house, the mansion, he said, his tone careful. We're barely there anymore. Most weeks, I only spend 2 nights there before coming up here. Amara nodded. She hadn't set foot in the mansion in nearly 3 months, preferring the peace and simplicity of the lake house. What are you suggesting? I think we should sell it, Robert said. It's too big, too empty. And it holds too many memories of a time in our lives that I'd rather leave behind. Amara considered this. The mansion had been a symbol of their success, a showcase for their wealth. But it had never truly felt like home, not the way this smaller, more personal space did. What would we do instead? She asked. Live here full-time? Robert smiled, looking relieved that she hadn't immediately rejected the idea. Maybe. Or we could get a smaller place in the city for the days we need to be at the office. Something that belongs to both of us in a way the mansion never did. The suggestion made sense. The mansion had always been more Robert's domain than hers, designed to impress rather than comfort. I think that's a good idea, she said. But what about all our things? We'll keep what matters and let go of the rest, he replied. Donate it, sell it, whatever feels right. Most of it is just stuff. Things I bought thinking they would make us happy. Amara smiled, recognizing how much Robert had changed. The man who had once measured his worth by his possessions now understood that they were just objects, meaningful only in relation to the life and love they represented. Okay, she agreed. Let's do it. After the ceremony. The day of their vow renewal dawned clear and bright, the lake a perfect mirror of the blue sky above. Amara stood at the bedroom window, watching as the event staff set up chairs on the lawn leading down to the water. There was a knock at the door and Zora entered, carrying a garment bag. Ready for this? She asked, hanging the bag on the closet door. Amara smiled. More than ready. Unlike their first wedding with its traditional white gown and formal tuxedo, they had chosen simplicity this time. Amara's dress was a flowing silk in a soft blue that matched the lake, while Robert would wear a light suit with no tie. As Zora helped her get ready, Amara felt none of the nervousness she had experienced on her first wedding day. Instead, there was a deep, settled certainty, the confidence of a woman who knew exactly what she was choosing and why. You look gorgeous, Zora said when they were finished. Radiant. Amara studied her reflection. The woman looking back at her had changed in many ways over the past year and a half. Her hair, now grown out to a short bob, was a mix of black and silver. There were new lines at the corners of her eyes and mouth. But there was also a strength in her gaze that hadn't been there before, a hard-won wisdom. Nervous? Zora asked. Amara shook her head. Not at all. This feels right in a way our first wedding never did. What do you mean? The first time we were in love, but we didn't really know what that meant, Amara explained. We hadn't been tested. We were promising forever without understanding how hard that promise would be to keep. She touched the locket Robert had given her at Christmas, which she wore on a longer chain today so it would rest against her heart beneath her dress. This time we're choosing each other with our eyes wide open. No illusions, no fairy tales. Just two imperfect people who've hurt each other, healed each other, and decided that life is better together than apart. Zora hugged her sister tightly. I didn't think I'd ever say this, but I'm proud of you both. What you've rebuilt is real. And strong. Downstairs, their 40 guests had gathered on the lawn. Amara watched from the window as Robert greeted everyone, looking handsome and relaxed in his light suit. Dr. Patel was there, along with several of the nurses who had cared for Amara during her treatment. The board members from the foundation had come, as had a few trusted colleagues from Jackson Tech. And of course family, Zora and Marcus, Nia and Isaiah, cousins who had flown in from across the country, and Robert's younger brother James, who had initially been skeptical of the reconciliation but had come around after seeing the changes in his brother. It's time, Zora said softly, offering her arm. Unlike their first wedding, there was no formal procession, no giving away of the bride. Instead, Amara and Robert had decided to walk to the altar together, a symbol of their equal partnership and shared journey. He was waiting for her at the bottom of the stairs, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. You are breathtaking, he said, taking her hands. You clean up pretty well yourself, she replied with a smile. Together they walked out onto the lawn, where their guests had risen to greet them with warm applause. The ceremony space was simple but beautiful, chairs arranged in a semicircle facing the lake, an arch of spring flowers marking the spot where they would renew their vows. The officiant, a close friend who had known them since their early days, spoke briefly about the meaning of recommitment, about choosing love not once but every day, especially when that choice is difficult. Then it was time for their vows. Robert spoke first, his voice steady but full of emotion. Amara, 21 years ago, I promised to love and cherish you for the rest of my life. I meant those words then, but I didn't fully understand their weight. I didn't know how easy it would be to take you for granted, to forget that love isn't just a feeling but a daily choice. He squeezed her hands, his eyes never leaving hers. I broke those vows. I hurt you in ways I can never fully make right. And yet, through your strength and grace, we found our way back to each other. Today I make new promises, to listen when you speak, to see you clearly, to honor your dreams as fiercely as my own. To be worthy of the incredible gift of your forgiveness and love. Tears slipped down Amara's cheeks as she began her own vows. Robert, our journey has not been an easy one. We've faced challenges I never could have imagined on our first wedding day. Cancer tested my strength. Betrayal tested my capacity to forgive. But through it all, the one thing I never doubted was that what we built together was worth fighting for. She took a deep breath, steadying her voice. Today I choose you again, Not the perfect husband of my youthful dreams, but the real man standing before me with all your flaws and strengths, your mistakes and your growth. I promise to remember that forgiveness is not a one-time gift but a practice we must both commit to daily. I promise to build our future on honesty, respect, and the knowledge that true love can survive even the deepest wounds if we're brave enough to heal together. They exchanged simple gold bands, new ones different from their original wedding rings. As Robert slipped the ring onto her finger, Amara felt a sense of completion, of things coming full circle but also moving forward into something new. The celebration afterward was joyful and relaxed. Good food, music, dancing under the stars. As evening fell, lanterns were lit around the property, casting a warm glow over the gathering. Amara and Robert moved among their guests, together and separately, receiving congratulations and well wishes. At one point, Amara found herself standing by the lake's edge, taking a moment alone to absorb everything that had happened. Dr. Patel joined her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "A toast," she said, offering one to Amara. "To health and new beginnings." "Thank you," Amara replied. "For everything. You saved more than just my life, you know." Dr. Patel smiled. "I only treated the cancer. You did the hard work of healing your marriage." "Some days I still can't believe we made it," Amara admitted. "There were moments I was so angry, so hurt, I couldn't imagine ever trusting him again. Yet here you are," Dr. Patel observed. "What changed?" Amara considered the question. "I realized that holding on to anger was hurting me more than it was hurting him. And I saw that he was truly committed to changing, not just saying the right words but taking concrete actions every day to be a different kind of husband, a different kind of man." She looked across the lawn to where Robert was talking with Zora's children, his head thrown back in laughter at something Isaiah had said. "But mostly, I remembered why I fell in love with him in the first place. And I discovered that despite everything, that love was still there, buried beneath the pain." Dr. Patel nodded thoughtfully. "In medicine we talk about remission, when the disease is no longer detectable but we remain vigilant. Perhaps relationships work the same way. The injury may heal but you never forget it happened. You stay alert, protect yourself in ways you didn't know you needed to before." "That's exactly it," Amara agreed. "We're in remission, stronger in the broken places, but always aware of how fragile happiness can be." Later that night, after the last guest had departed and they were alone in their home, Robert and Amara sat on the deck, wrapped in a blanket against the spring chill. The lake was still, reflecting a sky full of stars. "Happy anniversary," Robert said, kissing her temple. "Happy new beginning," Amara replied. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, content in each other's presence. Finally Robert spoke again. "I've been thinking about what's next for us," he said. "Beyond selling the mansion, beyond the company." "What do you mean?" "I've accomplished everything I ever wanted professionally," he explained. "Built a successful company, made more money than we could spend in 10 lifetimes, secured our legacy with the foundation. But this past year has shown me that none of that matters without the right person to share it with." He turned to face her, his expression earnest. "I want us to really live, Amara. Travel, explore, give back in more hands-on ways. Maybe spend 6 months of the year here and 6 months seeing the world." Amara smiled, touched by his vision of their future together. "What about the company? We've built an incredible team. It's time to trust them to carry things forward while we take more of a strategic role. We'll still be involved, just not day to day." It was a dramatic shift from the workaholic who had once prioritized business above all else. But then, everything about their relationship had changed. "I'd like that," she said. "To see the world with you. To build memories that have nothing to do with boardrooms or balance sheets." Robert pulled her closer. "Then it's settled. 1 more year to transition our roles and then we start our next chapter." As they sat there, planning their future together, Amara felt a profound sense of gratitude. The journey had been painful. Cancer and betrayal had nearly destroyed everything they had built. But through that darkness, they had found their way back to each other, stronger and wiser than before. They weren't the same people who had exchanged vows 21 years ago. Life had changed them, challenged them, broken them, and ultimately rebuilt them. And somehow, against all odds, they had arrived at this moment. Not perfect, but perfect for each other. 1 year later. The sun rose over the Greek island of Santorini, painting the white buildings in shades of gold and pink. Amara stood on the balcony of their rented villa, coffee in hand, watching fishing boats head out to sea. Behind her, she could hear Robert moving around the kitchen, preparing breakfast. 6 months into their new life and it still felt like a dream sometimes. After successfully transitioning their roles at Jackson Tech, remaining on the board but stepping back from daily operations, they had sold the mansion, donated most of their possessions, and embarked on the journey they had planned after their vow renewal. They had started in Japan during cherry blossom season, then made their way through Southeast Asia, spending a month in a small village in Thailand where they helped build a school through their foundation. From there, they had traveled to South Africa, where Amara had connected with distant relatives and Robert had been humbled by the history and resilience of the people they met. Now they were in Greece, with plans to continue through Europe before returning to the lake house for Christmas. "Breakfast is ready," Robert called from inside. Amara turned to see him setting a small table on the balcony, fresh bread, local honey, yogurt, and fruits. Simple pleasures that now meant more to them than the elaborate meals they once ate in fancy restaurants. "This looks wonderful," she said, joining him at the table. "I spoke with Zora last night while you were sleeping," Robert mentioned as they ate. "Nia got accepted to MIT, full scholarship through our foundation's program." Amara beamed with pride. Her niece had shown remarkable aptitude for computer science, and they had encouraged her to apply to top schools. "That's fantastic. Did you tell her we'll visit her on campus when we're back in the States?" Robert nodded. "She's already planning all the places to show us." They ate in companionable silence for a while, enjoying the view and each other's company. 2 years ago, such a peaceful moment would have been unimaginable. Robert would have been on his phone, checking emails, making calls, his mind always elsewhere. Now he was fully present, savoring each moment as if it might be their last. Because they both knew how precious time was. Amara's latest scans had shown no signs of cancer returning, but Dr. Patel's words remained with them: "Stay vigilant. 5 years cancer-free is our first major milestone." They were approaching the 2-year mark. Each clear scan was a victory, each healthy day a gift. The shadow of cancer had changed their relationship to time itself, making them acutely aware of its value, determined not to waste a single moment. After breakfast, they walked down to the beach, holding hands as they strolled along the black volcanic sand. An older Greek couple nodded to them in greeting, and Amara was struck by the thought that to onlookers, they probably appeared to be just another long-married couple enjoying their retirement. No sign of the storms they had weathered, the near collapse of their marriage, the illness that had almost claimed her life. "What are you thinking about?" Robert asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "About how far we've come," she replied. "About how close we came to losing all of this." He squeezed her hand. "I think about that every day. How differently things could have turned out if you hadn't been strong enough to fight, for your health and for us." "It wasn't just me," Amara said. "You fought too in your own way. To become a better man, a better husband." Robert stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "I still am. Fighting, I mean. Not a day goes by that I don't remind myself how lucky I am to have this second chance." Amara touched his face gently. The past 2 years had added more silver to his hair, more lines around his eyes. But they were good lines, evidence of smiles and laughter rather than stress and ambition. "We both got a second chance," she said softly. "At life, at love. And I'm not wasting a moment of it." They continued their walk, talking about plans for the coming months, countries they wanted to visit, projects they hoped to support through the foundation, improvements to make to the lake house when they returned. Their conversations now were full of we and us, their future entwined in ways that honored both their individual dreams and their shared vision. That evening they joined a small tour group for a sunset cruise around the island. As they stood at the boat's railing, watching the famous Santorini sunset paint the sky in impossible colors, a young couple nearby caught Amara's attention. They were clearly newlyweds, looking at each other with that mixture of adoration and disbelief that comes with new love. "They remind me of us," Robert said, following her gaze. "So young, so certain that love conquers all." Amara leaned against him, his arm automatically wrapping around her shoulders. "We were naive." "We were," he agreed. "But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe you need that blind faith at the beginning before life shows you how hard it really is." "And now?" Amara asked. "What do we have now instead of blind faith?" Robert considered the question. "Earned wisdom," he said finally. "The knowledge that love isn't enough on its own, it needs work, attention, sacrifice. But also the certainty that when it's real, when it's worth fighting for, even the darkest moments can lead to light." As the sun disappeared below the horizon, Amara thought about the journey their love had taken, from the bright, uncomplicated passion of youth to the complex, hard-won connection they shared now. It hadn't been an easy road. There had been moments of terrible pain, of doubt, of near defeat. But standing here now, wrapped in the arms of the man who had broken her heart and then helped heal it, watching as one day ended and another waited to begin, Amara knew with absolute certainty that every step of that difficult journey had been worth it. Later that night, back at their villa, they sat on the balcony under a sky full of stars, making plans for the next leg of their journey. Italy next? Robert suggested. We could visit those small villages in Tuscany you've always wanted to see. Amara nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. I've been thinking, she said after a moment, about what comes after this year of travel. What do you mean? I love what we're doing, seeing the world, experiencing new cultures, supporting projects through the foundation. But I think I want something more purposeful for the long term. Robert listened attentively, his full focus on her words. Another change from the man who once would have half listened while checking his phone. What are you thinking? I want to work more directly with cancer patients, Amara said. Especially women from underserved communities who don't have the resources and support I had. Maybe start a mentoring program through the foundation, connecting survivors with newly diagnosed patients. Robert's face lit up with understanding. Using your experience to help others through their darkest moments. Exactly, Amara confirmed. Cancer was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But in a strange way, it was also a catalyst for the best things, for our reconciliation, for this new life we're building. I want to help other women find hope in their own difficult journeys. I think that's a wonderful idea, Robert said. We could set up partnerships with hospitals across the country, starting with Detroit Metropolitan. Dr. Patel would probably help us design the program. Amara smiled at his immediate support, at the way he automatically included himself in her vision. You'd want to be involved too? Of course, he said as if surprised she would doubt it. Your passion is my passion. Your purpose is my purpose. That's what partnership means. And besides, he added with a tender smile, I have a unique perspective to offer too, as the husband who almost got it tragically wrong but found his way back. Amara leaned over and kissed him, overwhelmed with love for this man who had hurt her deeply but had also fought hard to become someone better, someone worthy of second chances. We'll start planning when we get back to the lake house, she said. But for now, let's enjoy every moment of this adventure. To new beginnings, Robert said, raising his glass of local wine. And to the journey, Amara added, touching her glass to his. Every step of it, the painful and the beautiful. As they sat there under the stars, talking about their shared future, Amara reflected on the unlikely path that had led them here. Cancer and betrayal, two things that could have ended their story, had instead become the catalysts for its most meaningful chapter. Life offered no guarantees. Tomorrow wasn't promised to anyone. But tonight, in this moment, she was whole. She was loved. She was at peace. And that was enough.